Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Jesus reminds us to watch for the signs of his return. Today we will explore further what we are seeing in our times that line up with what signs he said would indicate the potential of the end and his return. We will also discuss the practical meaning of this as we watch and as a remnant prepare as he so leads. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. It's End Times Friday, so we're excited to continue our series. I think on Wednesday I shared that I was going to racetrack.
Yes, how was that?
And that was amazing. It's interesting enough, the owner is a believer of the racetrack.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's in this case it's a drag race setup. So there's two roads next to each other. Mm-hmm. And you go a quarter of a mile from start to finish, and then it starts to go uphill, so that after you've gone past the finish line, you slow down. You slow down and go up a hill, and then you got to turn around and come back. So it's just a straightaway,
right?
And it's just, you get these signals, get ready to go, and you floor it. And that's it. You just floor it.
I probably don't want to know, but I do kind of want to know, how fast did you go?
So these were stock cars, Dodge Chargers, and in a quarter of a mile went from 0 to 100 miles an hour.
Oh wow!
In a quarter of a mile, and of course, if we went further, we would have got up to 120, 130, but it's just a quarter of a mile. And so we did that, and it was just spectacular fun. Just do it again and again and again, and come back and do it, and I got to go fast. So
you're like a little kid when you get to do that.
Yes, that's it. It's fun that you just go as fast as you possibly can, and there's a lot of power in these. So the guy who owned it brought out his chart that says, "I'm going to show you the records." And there's different types of cars, stock cars. There's what they call dragsters, and the dragsters are those ones that have that really long frame.
Right. Okay.
And he said they only can go 1,000 feet because they got to slow down. So they don't go a quarter of a mile. They only go about 2/10 or
because it takes them longer to slow down.
It takes them longer to slow down. Okay. So he said the dragster records in 1,000 feet is 350 miles per hour.
Wow.
And then these other souped up cars, in a quarter of a mile, the records are 300 miles an hour. By the time, which I asked him, I said,
"Can I have one?
Could I drive one of those?" He said, "No." You got to be a super skilled driver to be able to handle that speed, so you don't veer off course and stuff. And but I'd like to. And by the way, and this is really cool, I said, "What's the minimum age that we can have somebody drive?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Well, first of all, if you have a license, you can drive."
Really?
So no age if you have a license. He said if you're in driver's training and you're 14, 15 years old, you can drive if you have an adult in the car with you.
Oh my goodness!
So,
I'm surprised they let such young drivers.
Yeah. So I'm bringing when their grandsons come back from Texas for a trip. They have every Wednesday.
Uh-huh.
They have open day. Anybody can come and drive. So I'm gonna go and take them and teach them, let them drive. They would love it because they love driving fast too, and they love the racing and that kind of stuff, which they've done a little bit in go-karts and stuff, but they do it. And we have, when they were even younger, this is when they were, maybe, 5, 6, 7 years old. Because I like driving fast, there's a place at our house where, as we turn, there's a very long straightaway, and it's a private road. So, and you can see if there's a car coming or if there's anybody on the road. So we would turn. Linda would be on the right side, and the kids would be in the back. And I'd turn, and I'd say, "Hey, boys, do you want me to punch it?" And they'd say, "Yeah, punch it." So I floor it, and this was probably a good well over a half a mile. So by the time I've got toward the end, I'm going 150 miles an hour.
Oh my goodness!
And Linda is screaming, "Stop! No!" She's afraid. And she's screaming, and the boys are having a good time. So whenever we got in the car together, when I made that turn, "Hey boys, you want me to punch it?" And they were always, "Yeah," because they actually, what they enjoyed most was Linda screaming.
Exactly. Oh, that's so funny. Well, I have 2 points of reference for race car driving, and that's it. One is the Ford versus Ferrari movie.
Oh yeah.
Which actually was really good, but I can picture when he took the one owner of the company out and he put him in there for the first time. That would be me if I got in one of them. And then I don't know if you realize this or not, but the New England Dragway is about 2.5 miles from my house.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's, we will see some souped up cars go through here, heading over to the Dragway.
Have you ever gone over there?
Goodness, no. It's too loud for me. But I understand that it is something people love. There's a lot of people who really do enjoy it.
And that Ford versus Ferrari movie, they're showing what's called Le Mans, and it's a 24-hour race.
Right.
That you have 3 drivers. So when I got to, and I was just sharing this with somebody at the racetrack about desires of our heart. That God had helped me understand that what I really enjoyed was going fast. I don't need to own a car, a fast car, just be able to drive it.
Right.
So we had this privilege of going over to Italy because I'm on the board of directors, and our company actually bought a company near Modena, which is where Ferrari is.
Oh wow!
So the board set up a day of racing at Ferrari racetrack.
Oh, how fun.
So we get to go. We go to the factory, and then there's the racetrack is about 45 minutes away. And they were going to drive us from the Ferrari to the racetrack in a bus. There's about 10 or 12 of us. So we're getting ready, and I'm just standing around like everyone else, and a guy walks up to me and says, "Hey, would you like to drive the Lamborghini, because we need a car over there. Would you like to drive a Lamborghini to the racetrack?" I said,
"If I must."
I said, "Well, let me pray about it." Yes. He said, "Okay, come with me." And now everybody else had to ride in the bus. So it was just God's favor to say, I'm going to give you this privilege. So we get in the Lamborghini, and we're driving, and we're on a road. We're on a normal road with traffic. And I'm putting along, 50, 60 miles an hour behind cars. And the guy tells me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm being safe." He said, you don't need to be safe. You got a Ferrari, you got a Lamborghini, get going. I said, "Well, these cars are coming at me." He said, "You can go way faster than that. Just get out there and get in, and get going, And so, okay, so I do. And it's just immediately just fast around. And these cars are coming at me. and I just go and pull it over, and I'm passing all these cars, and it was one heck of a time. Well, the driver, as I said,
Linda wasn't in the car.
She was not in the car. So I'm talking to the driver. Tell me about you. What is it that what have you done? He said, well, I'm a race car driver, and I'm hired by Ferrari to train people. But he said a few years ago, and like 2 or 3 years ago, he said, I won Le Mans.
Oh,
that race of the Ford versus Ferrari.
That's excellent.
I said, you guys won it. He said, yeah. I said, tell me, what is the key to you guys winning that race? He said, well, there's two keys. Number one, we have to have a car that makes it 24 hours.
Right. Which is amazing in and of itself.
He said, so it's got to be, capable, and we have to have all these parts to be able to replace them immediately, knowing that they're gonna, some of them are gonna break and they got to be replaced. And so we got to have a great crew. He said, but then the second thing is, we take turns driving for 24 hours. He says we have to have practiced. When I'm off and I end my hours, and we go usually anywhere from 2 to 4 hours at a time, I got to go to sleep. I had to practice because you can't stay up. Otherwise you get too weary, and by the end of it, you're not capable. So he said, I got to, everybody.
I'm sure the adrenaline, it's pretty hard to go to sleep after you drive.
So we got to practice. Okay, I'm done. I got to go sleep. Get woken up. Okay, I drive again. I'm done. You got to go sleep. And he said that we who are really good at that, at the end, we're really alert, and we can do the things we need to do with the curves and all that. So it was fun, to do it. So he takes me to the racetrack, and then says, okay, let me show you how to run the racetrack. So he gets in the car. And he's driving it and accelerating, and he said, you don't stop around curves, you actually accelerate around curves and do all this stuff. And okay, so all right, he said, get in, let's go. And so then I learned, and that day, all of us, were measured by time, and I had the fastest time.
Oh my goodness!
Of going around the racetrack, and the funniest thing was, they have a long straightaway, and at the end of the straightaway is a sharp right turn.
Right.
So as I'm practicing, and I'm going up to 160, 180 miles an hour, and as you're and it's a wall. You see a wall, and I start braking. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I don't want to hit that wall. He says, no, you gotta trust the car. He said, you go, and I'm going to tell you when to just don't hit the brake. I'm going to ask you, when you hit this moment, decelerate, and then as you go to that curve, actually increase your speed again. And I don't want you using your brake. I said, so I'm not going to hit that wall, right? No. So we go, and I'm telling you.
And is he in the car with you when you're doing this? Okay.
And so you're going, 180 miles an hour down a straightaway toward a wall. And, your senses are, I need to brake.
Right.
And he's telling you, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And then you hit this point, and you think for sure, I'm going to hit that wall. And he says, okay, now decelerate. And boom, you decelerate, because it's on paddles. So I can actually decelerate the car by my paddles. It's not just taking your foot off the brake or off the gas.
Okay.
It's actually lowering the speed of the car.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay.
So you do, and then it slows, and he said, okay, now hit it again, and you go around this curve, and it's like, wow, that's something. I didn't hit the wall, and for me, I would have never gone that far.
No.
Before I decelerated, because it was like, I'm going to hit that wall, And so it was really fun to have a professional
I bet.
who knows what they're doing teach you, these tricks and stuff and how they do it, and his talking about Le Mans. And so when I watched that movie, which came out after I had done this, it really was fun to watch it and to see, the magnitude of their racing at Le Mans,
right?
And know that guy actually won it, So that was
right.
That was
yeah,
cool.
I loved that movie. It was a fun one.
Yeah. Well, as we've talked about, the end times, we've been discussing this. God says, "Watch the signs, watch for things," and I've actually talked about this with many people after we've been podcasting about this, where they really appreciated the discussion of the birth pangs.
Yeah.
And what's your view of that, and what do you see on that? And again, as you pointed out, birth pangs, first of all, they alert us to it's coming.
Right.
And then two is that it gets more intense and it accelerates in frequency. And so what I saw is that as you look at all the signs that we've been looking at, by the way, just a few days ago, massive earthquake in Acapulco, Mexico.
Yeah.
And there was one. Remember, there was one in Haiti, and there was one up in Alaska, and the frequency of those things is accelerating.
Right.
Which is one of the
along
signs.
with these crazy storms that are going on,
and the crazy storms, the cosmic disturbances. And then as you look at the world and the things that are happening with COVID and disease and famine and wars and rumors of wars, to me, we're seeing an acceleration of those.
Yes.
So that and the question that we always have is this just a period where we're going to go through a deeper level of wickedness that's going to be more difficult to live a godly life? And is that just a season we're going through, or in fact is this the intensity? Is this really birth pangs? Because when it and again, and all we can do is say, what's the truth? Well, the truth is, Jesus said, you're gonna see signs. It's gonna be birth pangs, which means it'll intensify and accelerate. And in reality, at some point, it actually will usher in the tribulation.
Right.
For sure. I mean, that's a for sure. So as we're experiencing that, the question that we always would have is, Father, as we're seeing the intensity and the frequency increase of signs that we can identify, that because you spoke about them.
Right. That so line up with what Scripture says will occur.
It's not really fuzzy. He didn't say, well, just watch signs, but I'm not going to tell you what they are. He said, these are the signs.
Right.
Okay, we know what they are. We talked about them. They're accelerating. They're intensifying. That's all true. So that the question is, well, are we headed toward the tribulation and therefore the end? And all we can say is that it's possible, for sure, because of what's happening. And now we're seeing certain things that could, let's say, give us visual understanding of, well, this is how it could work. For example, let's talk about the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is an identifier that I've agreed to and said yes to the new economic system.
Right.
And that allows me to function normally in terms of going to stores, restaurants, events, etc., because I have this mark.
Right.
Now, John wrote it, And he said, now remember, and again, we got to keep remembering, John is seeing what happens in reality. He sees what happens, and he says, I see that. Now I've got to write down what I see.
Right. Within the context of what he knows in terms of describing.
So like, for example, because of where we are in our history, we know that he probably saw airplanes.
Right.
How do you describe that in 30 AD or 90 AD? How do you explain that? And he said it. I see everybody going back and forth to and fro. He said the mark of the beast is on your forehead and on your wrist. And so as I prayed about that and thought about that, is that I believe he saw an electronic thing. And most people now with their cell phones, the way you open it is that you put it up to your face. And it's facial recognition, and that allows only you to have that phone opened.
Right.
And then, by the way, what do people wear on their wrist? Well, they wear Apple Watches that have electronic signals to them. So what I think John saw is that, well, in order to see a transaction, somebody put their wrist up and they passed.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And then what I believe he saw was, because he said it must be on their forehead, is I believe that either you went to a device and it read your face, your forehead, so to speak, or it was a device that, like your phone, you put up to it. I think he saw that. So his conclusion, well, the mark of the beast is on the wrist or the forehead. Well, that's interesting. So it's an electronic device. And the purpose of it is to control whether you participate in the new system. And remember, the beast is a one world government. It's not the Antichrist. And people we'll get into the details of that, but people tend to confuse those two. So when you have the mark of the beast, it's the mark of the system that allows you to economically do it. Well, and there's something about that. When that happens, the world willingly adopts it. So it's not by force.
Right.
It's not by...
They welcome it, actually.
It's not by manipulation. There's a welcoming of that. Yeah, sure, this is great. So what that means is that when it's offered, it's a solution to a problem. What's the problem? The problem ultimately is an economic collapse, that the world goes into a deep, really literally deep depression, where things just completely fall apart and you can't hardly function because of the world economic collapse. And then out of that comes the one world government that says, hey, we have a solution to that. We're going to forgive all your debt. We're going to probably take away all your ownership of personal property, but you can stay there. You don't have to pay rent. We're going to pay you money, get you back to work. You're going to be able to, and all you got to do is sign up and take the mark of the beast. And it'll be an electronic approval. Well, two things, and my question, and I've been noticing signs, and I'm asking the question: Is this the sign of the end? But I said I have a question. I said two things. How does a world population readily welcome giving up their sovereignty to one world government? Because you and I as Americans at the moment, that would not be an attractive proposition to us.
Right. But something happens that makes it attractive to the majority of the world.
Right.
Yes.
How can the world, remember this, the entire world, readily welcome that. And then two is, how does the mark of the beast work? Because it's got to be an electronic process that there's technology that either passes you or doesn't. Okay, well, in the last year and a half, we saw both of those with COVID. And in a sense, we kind of functioned as a one world government because the health organizations worldwide said everybody must go to quarantine. There were a few countries like Sweden that actually said, oh, we're not doing that.
Right.
But fundamentally, the world readily, I mean, literally in what I call lightning speed, they accepted that and say, yep, we're okay, we'll quarantine, we'll go to mask, we'll stop going to work, the restaurants got to shut down, you know, everybody said, okay. And it was like, we just saw that happen.
Right.
And
one crisis that affected everyone brought it all together.
And everybody said, yeah, it's okay. Now there's, you know, there became a resistance to it. And there's, you know, right now, I think if they came back today and said everybody has to quarantine and wear a mask everywhere, I think there'd be a lot of revolting against that. But we saw that. And then two is the vaccine passport. That a lot of people said, you know, in order for you to stay employed, in order for you to come to this restaurant, New York City put it in citywide. Unless you have a vaccine, you can't function in the city. Well, that's a measure of what the mark of the beast will look like.
Right.
It'll be something similar
Canada,
to that.
I believe.
Canada,
October 4th or something, they're going to pretty much any discretionary activities whatsoever. If you're over 12 years old, you cannot participate in without a vaccine passport.
Right. And same thing for Australia, by the way. They've gone to the extreme that we are going to monitor you. And if you don't have a vaccine and you go away from your house or something, we're going to come and take you away. So it's getting, you know, fairly extreme. And again, I don't believe the vaccine is the mark of the beast, but I'm saying it's a indicator
of,
that's how that could work.
Right.
So that now,
and also some desensitization to the idea of us having to do things like this.
Right. So that now that we've seen it firsthand, we don't actually have to imagine it anymore. Oh, hey, you just saw that. So, you know, my understanding of that is, I can now see how that's possible.
Right.
And since we can see it possible, is that one of the birth pangs that is accelerating and moving us, you know, into that moment? And I keep being reminded, and God keeps reminding me, my timing is not His timing.
Right.
And He said, so don't over emphasize that. Well, it's going to happen next week or next month, but I do believe that because of all these things that have happened and are happening, that the probability of being in this sequence headed toward the end is real. It's a real thing.
Right.
And that's why God says pay attention and try to understand it. So as we try to help you understand this, everybody, it's all we can do is tell you what the truth of the Word says. We can look at the things of life and how that works to that, and then we keep asking God, help us understand it and get clarity about your instruction at the beginning of Revelation is, read the words, pay attention, and be obedient to what I'm going to ask you to do as a result of all this. And so it's important. So as we consider that, let's go to this next section now, and this is what's called the opening of the seals. And let me set the stage for what this is. First of all, he says, who is worthy of opening the seals? And of course, Christ is the only one worthy. And as he opens the seals, he's opening the seal of the scroll. So again, I think I explained this last time a little bit.
You did, yeah.
We look at books.
Mm-hmm.
So we open a book and we just flip the pages. What they did is they had scrolls and they rolled them up, and then they would open them so that when we first open up, in essence, let's say we're reading like when Jesus was handed the book of Isaiah, the scroll of Isaiah. Okay, so he opened it. Now he turned to Isaiah 61. So he takes the scroll, and the very first piece of the scroll would be chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
So he unwound it to get to the place of chapter 61, and then read it, and then said, "Today this has been fulfilled in your way." And then he rolled it back up, so that when John opens up, when he says the scrolls are going to be opened up, and they're sealed, and the seal is similar to as we've seen in movies about kings, particularly in England. Is they take a letter and they put this kind of this
like a wax seal, a wax stamp, right?
Yeah. It's a hot wax. They stamp it with a symbol, and then it hardens.
Mm-hmm.
And the rule was that nobody could open up that seal unless you were authorized by the king.
Right.
And so it's a similar thing here, is that these seals are waxed, are basically wax seals. And think of the book was written, so God has written the book, and he starts at the end and starts rolling it up, and then he stamps it, rolls it up some more and stamps it, rolls it up some more and stamps it, all the way to the very end, and then he stamps it. And so he says, okay, let's open it up. And so Christ opens it up for John to see and understand and read. And so it's there's 7 seals. So he goes through a process of, okay, let me help you understand that these things are going to happen, and these seals primarily are happening prior to the tribulation. So it's not after the tribulation.
Oh, interesting. All 7 seals occur
all seven seals happen prior to the tribulation.
Okay.
And then the tribulation starts. The tribulation, again, is through a collapse, which actually are kind of described here. The one world government comes up with the solution. Everybody embraces it except the remnant and Israel, by the way. And the world has a perception of great wealth building during that first 3.5 years. And they consider it to be terrific. Yeah, the solution is working. It's fantastic. Now for the remnant, and remember, the remnant are the ones that have the truth and the wisdom of God
have not taken the mark of the beast. Also,
to say, don't do that. I'm gonna get you through like I did Daniel in a different way, and I'm gonna give you the wisdom and discernment to do that. And so let me just stop there for a second. By the way, this is why it's so critical that we have community together to have confirmation. Is this the mark of the beast? And we'll know that we know that we know. And it's not going to be fuzzy. And it's not going to be, I hope you guess right. No, God says, if you have a heart to hear it, I'm going to make it absolutely certain. And you'll confirm that with other believers that this is the mark of the beast. Now, there's one, in a way, simple way to kind of know. It's about the one world government. So people say, well, maybe the vaccine is the mark of the beast. Well, not yet. Why? Well, because it's not one world government yet.
Right.
It's not ushering in my release of my sovereignty as an American to the one world government, because that's when the mark of the beast is given. Why? Well, because you got the beast.
Right. Right.
And it's the new system. So I think it'll be fairly easy.
Yes.
But what we
Yet
need,
the Bible does say that some will be deceived, even some believers will be deceived.
okay, think about that. Why would that be?
My guess on it is that they're not abiding or listening, and honestly, they look at it from a logical, fleshly standpoint of, well, God couldn't want me to do this because that would mean I'd go without food, or that would mean, I don't get to do XYZ, whatever. And in that, they're looking at things that are valued by the world and making the judgment rather than asking God for the wisdom.
Yeah, because I've concluded a certain aspect of it isn't this a good idea? And see, because people don't understand the truth of Scripture, one is they've been told it's the mark of the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when it first happens, the Antichrist isn't known. So they would say, well, it's not the Antichrist.
That's right, because he actually comes to power in the middle, right? At
Right.
3.5 point. Okay.
Yeah. Through that first 3.5 years, he's a member of the beast.
Right.
But he's not identified.
It rises to power.
He rises to power during that time.
Okay.
So believers, Christians, will actually say, we have a problem, economic problem. This is a solution. They will say, that's from God. Isn't that a good idea? And again, I can tell you, I can give you a couple simple examples. Number one, a lot of churches and a lot of believers have drifted into what's called Universalism. And Universalism is that Christ isn't the only way to ultimate salvation and being in eternity with God. There's lots of different ways. Why? Well, because God is love. There's even
and they've redefined love.
They've redefined it, and there's even evangelicals that even are saying there's actually no hell. There's actually no demonic. Everybody. I just saw a broadcast. This is about 2 months ago of a very well-known television preacher, evangelical, says he's spirit-led, and he comes on his broadcast and makes a statement. I've been told by God that nobody stays in hell. Everybody winds up in heaven, and hell is going to be emptied out. And it's like, that's not what Scripture says.
No.
Even what Jesus himself said. So, well, why would he do that? I've redefined it because I think. So that.
And if I were God, I would.
If I was God, I would do that. And so, as a result of that, there will be deception, and it'll be. No, this is actually, they're going to say this is of God. It's a good thing. And by the way, along the way of the first 3.5 years, and we'll talk about this later, is called the false prophet. And by the way, what's a false prophet? A false prophet is one who claims to be speaking on God's behalf, but is completely deceptive and false. And so he portrays himself as, this is of God. But the truth is he's not, because he's a false prophet, and that's a major player in the tribulation. So there'll be a lot of believers. So the import of all this is that it's really critical that we have a heart to follow God, know what the Word has to say, and then have a community around us that we can confirm. You know what? I see this now. I confirm this. That's the mark of the beast. No, don't take it.
Right.
And we're going to say, well, that's going to provide consequences for us. And God
and
says,
even in that community, just a reminder, it's not everybody get together and share your opinion. on this. It's let's get together and say, we're going to all seek God and ask him to give us wisdom and insight on this, and then come back together and confirm that the Holy Spirit led us all to the same answer.
Yeah.
So it's not, let's just all get together and gab and decide if we think this might be it, and then go make our own little group. And, you know, these things happen, you know?
Yeah. And this is where as we understand the nature of God and the truth of God, we actually have an example already. And that's Jeremiah and Babylonia. That God said, because you've gone your own way, Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar is going to come and take you and defeat you, and I'm not going to save you from that. And so they say, nah, it ain't going to happen, no, it ain't going to happen. Well, Nebuchadnezzar comes. And again, there becomes, and this is going to be the truth of the tribulation. This will be the truth of Christ's return. It's going to happen.
Right.
There'll actually be a day that the one world government is set up. It's going to happen. Just like it happened with Babylonia and Nebuchadnezzar. So he surrounds the city, and he's going to take it over. And the rulers say to Jeremiah, could you ask God, what do we do now? And Jeremiah said, why bother? Because you never follow him anyway. No, we promise you. We'll follow him. Tell us what to do. So, okay. So he says, God, I know that they haven't listened before, but what do you have to say now? And God says, tell him this. Everybody get out of the city and surrender willingly to Nebuchadnezzar. If you do, and he defines it as the remnant. He says it, you're the remnant.
Okay.
If you do, he's going to carry you away. You're going to lose everything you got, but you'll have a new life, and I'll give you the covenant in that new life. And you won't be harmed. Just surrender willingly and get out of the city and surrender. If you stay and fight, all of you will be killed, including your wives and your kids. I'm telling you, don't do it. And so they said back to Jeremiah, we don't believe it. We're fighting. We're going to stay and fight. Well, there was a remnant that was in community that said, well, we know what they're saying. By the way, all the leaders were saying, stay. The remnant were really lay people. And we have the examples of who they were. Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were representative of that, because they were not professional leaders in the Jewish system. They were just lay people. So the lay people got together in community and said, we believe what God just said. We're going to leave the city, and we're going to basically go with our hands up. We surrender. And Nebuchadnezzar said, okay, come with me. I'm not going to kill you. You come with me. The rest of them that stayed all got killed. The men, the women, and the children all got killed. Okay, now people say, wait a second. I thought Israel was God's children. God said, yeah, they are. But all I can do is invite them to the truth. And if they choose not to, they're going to have consequences to that, which they did. He said, even my own children, because my heart is for them to be saved, but they're choosing not to.
Right.
And so when we get to the tribulation, we got to be in that same spot of having community that said, okay, God, what are you saying to us? Well, one thing he's going to say, and this is absolute, don't take the mark of the beast.
Right. There's zero question about that.
So we got to have people around us that understand that. And how do we together do that as he so tells us to prepare, get ready, here's what I'm going to do. But we know one thing is don't take the mark of the beast. And we'll talk a little bit later about something very interesting, and that is this, that God's wrath comes. After the mid-trib, the Antichrist stands up and says, I'm God, everybody's got to worship me.
That's the Abomination of Desolation.
The Abomination of Desolation.
Okay.
And what that does is begin the 7 judgments of God against the world and the Antichrist and Satan. And it's 3.5 years now of, and we'll get into this, really awful stuff. And it's like what happened to Pharaoh with Moses on steroids. So he had 10 plagues that were problematic and ultimately killed all the firstborns. And these things are way worse than that. That happen against the world. And this is what it says. Every person that took the mark of the beast is the recipient of that wrath. Well, we got to really get into the understanding of that. And that is, well, does that mean if I'm a believer and I take the mark of the beast, aren't I protected? The way I read it, the answer is no, because it doesn't qualify it.
Right.
Well, you took the mark of the beast. It may mean, by the way, and again, this isn't clear or precise, it's possible that if there is a rapture, you're not raptured because you took the mark of the beast.
Interesting.
And again, the whole pre-trib rapture is, well, we'll never have to face that choice because we'll be raptured. And as I look at Scripture and we process this, I wouldn't say that's absolute, so I'd be careful. Now, by the way, every believer says, I hope that's true. I would like to be raptured and not be here during all that stuff.
But we are wiser to prepare for any of the above. The pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib.
Yeah, and there's lots of evidence to say, it really may not be pre-trib, and that choices are going to have to be made. And that's why, the remnant community is so critical, to understand that. So as we look at that aspect of it, these things are going to happen. And here's how I try to portray it for people right now. Because the question comes back. Well, okay, if we're in the tribulation or getting head toward the tribulation, yeah, it's really important to be in the remnant. But what if we're not? Isn't life just going to be normal? And I'm saying this. Okay, I said, let's assume it's not. How would you characterize the condition of the world today? And as they talk about it, they say, well, it's a lot different than I'm used to. Yep. I can't predict anything anymore.
Right.
Yep.
It's a hot mess.
It's a hot mess.
The
economic cycles are different. Boy, the debt of all the governments in the world are getting out of control, and they can't be really managed. An event in the world can trigger everybody being affected by it. And so I might have planned for a certain thing, but now it's different because of that event. So for example, and I say to him, I said, yeah. I said, think if you were a commercial real estate developer building office buildings in December of 2019. Your forecast was full speed ahead.
Right.
As far as we're concerned, everything's going to be great. Well, what happens in February, March, and April is COVID. Everything shuts down. You can't even go to work. And building an office building meant you're building an empty building.
Right. Major disruptor
because
not returning to anything normal since.
Yeah, and not because of anything you did. It was a global event. And by the way, now that what's happened going forward, because everybody learned, hey, Zoom really works.
Mm-hmm.
I can save all this time commuting. So now, and I've talked to a lot of businesses, they have restructured their new work life. And that is,
Right.
well, we don't want everybody to come to work every day. Actually, they can do stuff at home, work through Zoom. When we have meetings, which is important, and yeah, we still need to get together periodically, let's have them come to the office for the meeting, but they don't need to be here 5 days a week. And they don't need an office anymore. And so we're
a lot more hybrid work, a lot of sharing of office space.
We are restructuring the way our space looks now, and we don't need 1 million square feet. We just need 100,000 square feet. Well, that's a permanent change.
Right.
Okay, why did all that happen? Because of an event beyond your control. So I say, if you look at all that, wouldn't it be important, assuming we're not even in the end, but wouldn't it be important to be in a community that hears God's voice, to know what to do, how to prepare, what to do next, where it's going to happen. When this happens to me, what do I do now? I said, it doesn't really change the message. Right. And that is, hey, children, I need you to come and follow me. And you need community around you to assist you, because things are going to get tricky, worse, difficult, and beyond your control. And you can kind of see that. So the message that I say to people doesn't really change much per se. And as we play this out, we'll know, is this really the end or not? Even if it's not, I still need to know what to do, and to believe that you're going to provide me the covenant. You're going to bless me to make me a blessing, and to give it away. So, well, we've run out of time by talking about all this, and we'll get to the seals for sure. But it's I think it's been a really important discussion to really encourage people that look at what's happening, realize the importance of being together and learning what it means to hear God's voice, not out of presumption, I think, or have people tell me what I should do, particularly out of any political persuasion, but rather just let's hear from God together and enjoy the walk, with Him. So we'll continue. If you have questions about it, send us questions at afjministry.com or on the YouTube comments, and we're happy to do it.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to add, if you don't mind, as you're talking about, getting that community. If you don't have that community already, start building that now.
Yeah.
Don't wait. And then in addition to that, not just any community, but community that is abiding and seeking God's will. And if you are struggling to cast that vision for your group, go to afjministry.com. And as a small group, I cannot tell you how highly I recommend going through the first course, at least, that is Abiding in the Vine. And that will teach you and teach others really how to abide and open their eyes to what that looks like, because this is a time you need to know how to hear God's voice.
Yeah. Amen to that. So. Yeah. All righty. Well, we'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend, and we'll look forward to picking this up again. It'll be fun.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.